Feast your eyes, glut your soul on my accursed ugliness, are the piercing words spoken by the Phantom immediately after he is unmasked by his captured soprano in Gaston Leroux's 1909 novel, The Phantom of the Opera. A gothic horror mystery about a Swedish opera singer who is kidnapped and romanced by a disfigured musical genius who hides behind a mask. The story is told by a character referred to as the narrator, who is interviewing eyewitnesses of mysterious events that took place at the Paris Opera House in the late 1880s. The opera house was said to be haunted by an elusive figure called the Phantom of the Opera, a man who is described as corpse-like with no nose, sunken eyes and cheeks, yellow parchment-like skin, and only a few wisps of ink-black hair covering his head. The Phantom is also referred to as having a death's head throughout the novel. This imagery brings a rather horrid figure to mind. The novel terrified and delighted readers. This excitement caught the attention of early film studios. In 1925, the Universal Pictures Film Company set out to create a full-length motion picture of Leroux's novel. The film was directed by Rupert Julian and Ernst Lemley. The picture would star famed character actor and special effects makeup artist Lon Chaney as the Phantom. Chaney was tasked with translating Leroux's death's head from the pages of a book to the silver screen. He was no stranger to transforming into characters. He had already spent over a decade gracing the silver screens with his involved makeup looks. Just a year prior, in 1924, he was unrecognizable as Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Some might see Chaney's transformations as movie magic, yet, to Chaney, it was no magic trick. According to an interview that was later cited by film historian Scott McQueen, of American Cinematographer, Chaney said, "I'm supposed to have evolved some magic process of malforming my features and limbs. It's an art, not magic. I achieved the death's head of that role without wearing a mask." To create his look for the Phantom, Chaney would build up his cheeks using cotton and cauldron, a rather flammable substance of pyroxene and alcohol. He would glue his ears back in addition to wearing an exaggerated bald cap that would provide a more pronounced forehead. He would use a thin wire to pull his nose back to expose and enlarge his nostrils. He then used grease paint and contours to finish the rest of the look. Chaney explained that it was the use of paints in the right shades in the right places, not the obvious parts of the face, which gave the complete illusion of horror. My experience as a stage manager, which were wide and varied before I jumped into films, taught me much about the lighting effects on the actor's face and the minor tricks of deception. It's all a matter of combining paints and lights to form the right illusion. All of these techniques would pay off in creating Chaney's now iconic Phantom look. Prior to the film's release, Chaney and the publicity studio refused to show the makeup in any of the advertisements. Chaney wanted the audience to feel the same shock that Christine experienced in the film, and it truly paid off. The makeup was so shocking and horrifying to audiences, allegedly women fainted in the theaters during the famous unmasking scene. Although any credible sources to this claim are hard to find, it is easy to see how this urban rumor took off like wildfire. Lon Chaney paved the way not only for actors portraying the Phantom, but for special effects makeup as a whole. He started a makeup evolution that would skyrocket in film and theater over the next century. Many would build on the foundations that he created and continue to evolve the Phantom's facial prosthetics. 18 years later, in 1943, Universal Studios would produce a Technicolor remake of the 1925 hit. This adaptation, by Eric Taylor, Samuel Hoffenstein, and Hans Jacobi, and directed by Arthur Lublin. Claude Rains would be cast as the titular role of the Phantom, also known as Eric Claudien, much to Lon Chaney Jr.'s dissatisfaction, who had wanted to don the mask much like his father nearly 20 years prior. In this production, the Phantom starts the film as a lead violinist in the opera's orchestra. He is later scarred horribly by acid after attacking a man who has stolen his music. This breaks the narrative that the Phantom was born with his facial deformities. Special effects makeup had come a long way over the years since the original film. The introduction of silicone prosthetics would allow makeup artists to create even more realistic special effects makeup. But the film's makeup artist, Jack Pierce, had a couple of hard obstacles in his way. The first hurdle was Claude Rains himself. Rains objected to a full face of prosthetics because he felt that it would harm his leading man image. In addition, Rains made it very clear he was only going to allow for one good close-up. In addition to working with a difficult actor, makeup artist Jack Pierce also wanted to be considerate of the servicemen who were returning from the Second World War who had received facial injuries. Christine actor Susanna Foster commented, "We had been in the war for just over a year, and they were worried about boys coming back with terrible injuries on their faces, so they decided not to make a fantastically horrible makeup." All of these factors forced Pierce to create a considerably toned-down look on only half of Claude Rains' face. The process included silicone wax, cream foundations, and alcohol-activated products, mostly used to color in and finish the reddish acid burn look. This would be the first adaptation to start the trend of having the Phantom's deformity on the right side of his face. The film would go on to be yet another commercial success, even winning several Academy Awards. In 1962, the Hammer Film Productions created yet another adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera. Director Terence Fisher and writer Anthony Hines sought out to create a more romantic and gothic version of the story, this time setting the story at a London opera house and straying even further from Gaston Leroux's original text. This story is about Professor L. Petrie, who is played by Herbert Lom, a composer who has had his whole life's work stolen. Very reminiscent of the 1943 film. While attempting to burn down the printing house of the man who stole his music, Professor Petrie is burned horribly by acid while escaping the fire. This causes him to crawl into and take up residence in the sewers beneath the opera house. The production hired on Australian makeup artist Roy Ashton of Dracula 1958 and The Mummy 1959 fame. Ashton, a master of grease paint and monster makeup, created many initial ideas revolving around acid burns, such as these images here from his own personal sketchbook. Ashton eventually settled on this design, giving the Phantom a grayish skin tone and several acid burns around the left side of Herbert Lom's face, even showing the cheekbone exposed through the skin. Using silicone and latex for the bone underneath and the elevated parts of the acid burns. The rest was grease paint. Unfortunately, Ashton's makeup is only seen for a very limited time at the end of the film. In 1986, composer Andrew Lloyd Webber and director Hal Prince would create the wildly successful and popular musical The Phantom of the Opera. Michael Crawford originated the role of the Phantom in the musical on the West End and Broadway. Crawford would endure a lengthy prosthetic application every night before the show. The makeup for the stage musical was created and designed by Christopher Tucker, who was world-renowned for his striking Elephant Man makeup. Tucker had to create a design that would be able to be seen from the back of the theater house and stand up to the rigorous trials of live performances. Tucker would create 2 single-use prosthetic pieces out of foam latex, which is lighter and more durable than silicone prosthetics. Tucker created a skull piece that would go on the actor's temple over a bald cap, and a cheek piece with a lip prosthetic for the actor's face. Then, using various shades of cream stage makeup, Tucker would define and accentuate the deformity, which was juxtaposed to the left side of the actor's face, which was done up in a heightened beauty look. In the original production, Michael Crawford wore a light blue contact on his right eye. This practice was abandoned for many years and rarely picked up by other actors. The makeup process took almost 2.5 hours, but in more modern times it has been clocked around an hour. At the time, with the exception of seeing the show live, it was extremely rare to be able to see what the Phantom's prosthetics looked like. The production wanted to keep the mystery of what was underneath the mask. They even went as far as making it a part of the performance contract that they were, and to this day, not allowed to take pictures of the makeup and share them with the public. Very reminiscent of how Lon Chaney wanted to conceal his makeup look until the first reveal in the film. The musical became such a global phenomenon that a film version of the musical was inevitable. In 2004, Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical was adapted for film by Warner Brothers and Universal Pictures, and it was directed by Joel Schumacher. The film would star Gerard Butler as the Phantom. Makeup artist Jenny Sherkor would redesign the Phantom's deformity to be something a little more grounded in reality rather than the elaborate theatrical makeup. Gerard Butler would undergo almost 4 hours in the makeup chair every morning, where they would place a bald cap, facial and temple prosthetics. Underneath the cheek prosthetic on the right side of Butler's face, there would be a wire that would pull down his right eye, causing the bottom eyelid to droop. The latex prosthetic piece would then be colored with flesh tones and shades of red to show irritation of the skin. This particular makeup look was critically panned for being lackluster, often being called a sunburn, and even having to be digitally enhanced with CGI in several shots in the film. Despite the makeup's panned reception, it is masterfully applied and a true testament to makeup's evolution in entertainment. A makeup look this realistic was perhaps unthinkable to those like Lon Chaney, who paved the way in prosthetic makeup artistry. Today, the skills and methods of makeup artists past are readily available, and anyone can perfect their skills without necessarily needing to attend an academy. Their lessons are allowing a whole new generation of artists to run free and create. Movie-grade prosthetics and makeup products are easily accessible on the public markets. Over the last 8 years, I have been following in the footsteps of Lon Chaney and other makeup artists who have come before me and recreated some of these famed Phantom of the Opera looks. I am fortunate, like so many others, to have access to these artists' records and knowledge. With this learned artistry, people are constantly creating more and pushing the boundaries of what their skills can do. As the 100th anniversary of Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera approaches, one is forced to wonder what fantastic or horrifying makeup looks individuals will create in the next 100 years of entertainment.